So when I got this opportunity, first thing was like the strength of Palestinians came to my mind, because that's what it is all about. That they are so steadfast, they are so strong. And what can we do? We also have to realize, while the global march to Gaza got a lot of attention when that was happening, and simultaneously Iran-Israel was happening, people were still being killed. We need to stop getting used to this news. We need to stop getting used to the fact that hundreds of people are killed every day. As a journalist as well, I want to come out of this idea of neutrality, because it's not going to take us anywhere. We need to, as humans, talk about what's happening.
Today on record, we have Nikita Jain with us. Nikita is a journalist. She works for Maktoob. Nikita, in June, had gone to Egypt to cover Global March to Gaza. Global March to Gaza is a people's movement where 3,000 people from across the world were about to gather in Egypt to break the siege and to bring aid to Palestinian people through Rafah border in Egypt. Now, Nikita was there. She was covering this march. Her passport was seized. She was detained. Today, we are going to have a conversation with her about what happened and what was her experience covering this march, and whether such movements are going to continue, and what is the future of such people's movement trying to break the siege in Gaza. So, Nikita, can you tell us a little bit about what is this march to Gaza, and what is that they do? I mean, we know that Greta and this whole team, we know that there are multiple attempts of trying to break this siege to Gaza, and then March to Gaza was like one of these multiple fronts who are trying to somehow break this siege, get the aid to Palestinians in Gaza. So, can you tell us a little bit about this whole march, and what is it, and what was it like when you were there?
So we know that there is a genocide happening in Gaza, and there is this, every day we are seeing images. It's like a live genocide on social media that we're witnessing. And there is this massive thing of, like, the Palestinians, they're being starved, like it's a man-made starvation. Their aid is not being allowed inside. Literally there's no water. I mean, man-made, starvation. They're not allowing water, food. Children are dying of malnutrition. We're witnessing all of that. So the Global March to Gaza was one of the initiatives out of many to march to Rafah border in Egypt and break the siege. That is, very peacefully march towards Rafah border and demand the authorities, the Israeli government and the US government, other governments, put pressure on them to let aid in so that people can have food, and also demand ceasefire. The idea is that why Global March to Gaza happened is because all the governments of the world were complicit in letting whatever was happening in Gaza, whatever is happening in Gaza, and there was not enough pressure built by them to let these imperialist regimes like US and Israel to stop what they're doing. So the idea of the march was that thousands of people will come together from different parts of the world, and they're not going to be just activists, they're going to be normal civilians who care about the issue despite their identity, and they're going to peacefully march and demand to break the siege. That was the whole movement.
Yeah, that sort of like brings me to my next question, is that when you say that we see that there are solidarities about Palestine, for Palestine, all across the world. There are people, whenever you see images of solidarity marches, like there's a sea of people, be it in many countries you've seen, be it in the West, even in India, in couple of cities that you've seen, like in metros, that people have marched for Palestine. But at the same time, this spirit that the common people have for Palestine, it is not there. At least the governments of these countries, they are very, as you said, they are very complicit about it. Now, when you joined this Global March to Gaza, what was your initial, what was in your mind? What was your initial thought and the motivation behind it? What were you thinking?
I think since the day, since October 7th, there is this helplessness amongst all of us. We're witnessing despite being activists, lawyers, or journalists, anyone who is part of like advocacy groups or is a normal civilian, we're seeing this helplessness, right? We're seeing a live genocide in front of us. And I was talking to a lot of journalists, even in like I'm disappointed with Indian journalists because a lot of them are not coming out openly and talking about it. But those who did, we always talked about if we had a chance, we would definitely do something, or if given a chance, we would, as somebody who care about the issue, go and cover it and also help. I had a friend from India who did cover it, and like I saw the helplessness even when she was there, the helplessness of being on ground and not being able to do anything. The stories, the behavior of Western media and the Indian mainstream media. So when I got this opportunity, first thing was like the strength of Palestinians came to my mind, because that's what it is all about. That they are so steadfast, they are so strong. And what can we do? And there was this helplessness, but now you have a chance to do something. And as a journalist, as somebody who cares about humanity, I decided that despite this being a risky initiative and plan, I would, from my side, at least do something, at least go there. This was basic. And also, going to Egypt, going to Cairo and being part of this march was, of course, a privilege as well, because not everyone can afford this, because it was voluntarily basis. From first world countries, there are civil society groups, and the governments, despite not supporting Palestine, are still, the democracy is a little better than ours there. So for them, coming to Egypt was not a big issue. For us, third world countries, I mean, that's not the proper term, but for countries who are, just developing and who are where economy is dwindling, for them to go there, deciding to go there was a big step. There were many who came forward to help, saying that we'll do crowdfunding, we'll send people who want to go, we'll do crowdfunding for them. So there were a few people from India who went, and that help was provided. But it's still a privilege to go there. And I thought that if I am getting this opportunity, I would love to just cover and show my solidarity in any way possible. And that was the thought, that this can be my way of showing solidarity. A basic act, actually. This is bare minimum any one of us did. I mean, it was unsafe, but again, it's nothing compared to what they are going through.
Yeah, so I mean, while you were there, I don't think we would have known about this global march to Gaza as much as when you broke the news that that these people who have come for the march, they are being detained, then being harassed by Egyptian authorities, and the protests and that kind of chaos that broke out when all of you were being detained in Ismailia. I mean, can you tell us what it was like? I mean, why were you people detained when it was like a peaceful march, and there is already an understanding or an assumed understanding that Egypt is a neighboring state for these Palestinians, and it shares a border, and whereas US, Israel, everybody's been suggesting throw them in Jordan, throw them in Egypt. So you see there is a sense of like, this country is, maybe it'll be easier if you take this route. But when you're in Egypt, when people are trying to get into Palestine, when they're trying to break the siege, they get detained. They get, your passports were taken, you people eventually got deported, and maybe, I don't know what, you can tell us more what happened while you were there.
I think the thing is that the mainstream was not covering it well, because it was well established that a global march to Gaza is going to take place. Just like alongside Sumud convoy, which was joined by Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya, this march was planned simultaneously. So both of these organizers were also in touch with each other. So it's just not like that this was something new. This was already there, but the mainstream did not cover it. So for people to know about it was very limited. Where it also shows the coverage of Palestine when it comes in this whole issue. It was disappointing. Even in India, like only I feel alternative media, few of them, including Maktoob, are the ones who are covering this, and we did a story beforehand, before leaving, a few days before, that there is this march happening, and Indian delegation is joining, but still the reach, like, it also depends on people, on how they are perceiving the Palestinian news. It all happened. The movement and the organizing had been happening for a while. I got to know about it pretty late. There was a registration process. There was a vetting process. In the form as well, we were told about the security issues. We were told that deportation might happen. We were told that we will not do anything that goes against Egyptian laws. There were rules about following Egyptian laws, how it will be peaceful, and if anyone who breaks these rules will not be a part of the march. Just before I was supposed to leave on 12th, we got to know that people who had already reached there, they were being deported. So basically what Egyptian government was doing was so it's old Cairo, which is called downtown, is where massive protests also take place, is where a lot of protesters had gathered, and they were staying in big delegations. There were simultaneously a lot of things happening. Either if it was a big group, they were being deported from the airport, not even given passing the immigration. Those who passed through the immigration were staying in hostels or hotels that were raided, and those guys were put in rooms for hours and then deported. I reached Egypt. I did my immigration, and there was a tense. You could see that there was police. I mean, they said it was also a regular protocol, but some locals said that no, this is excess police this time. We don't see such a massive police. And then on 13th June, it was decided that everyone will gather at Ismailia. That will be a gathering point, and from there we'll decide how to go, because the march was supposed to start from Sinai and then go towards Rafah border on the Egyptian side. So that was like a walk of 100 kilometers or so, and that was supposed to be done within 3 days. As soon as we were given a couple of hours, from 12 to 4 was the collection point time, because there were thousands of people. Despite being deported from the hotels, there were thousands who still came. We were part of these groups, Telegram groups, and there were some people who were deported, and they're like, we're going to try again. We're going to come back. They're not going to stop us. So that was the passion that everyone had. And not all of them were journalists or activists or from civil society. I met so many people who were just civilians, working in an organization. They took off. There was this girl from South Korea who is an English teacher, and she took an off. And she said, my boss was she was so nice to me, and she was in solidarity. And she said, do this thing, do whatever you want to. And she got in touch with different Palestinian groups in Korea. And she was the only Korean who was part of the delegation, for example. So people like that were part of this group. So on 13th, we reached. I also got to know that, okay, this is happening, and I reached the spot. We were a few people, probably 10 or so, when a police officer reaches out to us saying, give us your passport. So when we asked, why do we need to give our passport? He's like, oh, this is basic, normal security check. Initially, he took photos of the passport and went away. But then as people started coming in, they forcefully gathered us at one place and again asked for our passports. Despite saying no, we don't want to give the passport, they started getting aggressive. They started shouting at us. So a lot of people started giving in their passports, looking at them. And because the police started getting aggressive, all of us gave our passports. There were some clever ones who, snaked through and did not. But majority did. And then for hours we were made to sit. We were not allowed to shoot. There was another journalist from Tunisia, I guess. She even got her mic out. Her camera was taken away by the authorities. And when she said that she's a journalist, they didn't listen to her. So it showed that for them, it didn't matter who you were. They said that this is illegal, you need permission. Have you had permission? And permission was, since the past couple of months, letters were being sent to Egyptian authorities, and Egyptian authorities did not say no, that okay, we will not allow you, and they were giving statements as well, like proper permission is needed, whatever. And an activist, an elder senior activist, also told me that she saw letters of permission being given to the group. So yeah, at that moment, everyone was told, okay, no, you don't have permission, you don't have to, you can't go further. We were at Ismailia, which was the collecting point. We somehow managed to reach. We were around 50, 60 people. Just like 5-6 kilometers away was checkpoint 1, and before that, checkpoint 2, which we had crossed easily. That's where cars, other people who were coming to join us, were stopped, and that the group became bigger. So there were thousands of people at checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2, and few of us at Ismailia. And after like hours of like 3-4 hours of sitting and not knowing what's happening, there was aggression. They were asking us to go back. There were many actors who refused, saying that either we go forward or we're not going to move. And that's when the Egyptian authorities started getting aggressive a little bit. So people got upset, and that they were like, okay, we're going to sit here and we're going to protest. And they started protesting at Ismailia, the place of collecting point. And for a couple of hours, that kept happening. And that's when I also made the video, because the situation was tensed, and we could see the aggressive attitude of the authorities. It was becoming aggressive by the minute. So because our passports were taken away, we were not sure what's going to happen. And also Egyptian authorities kept saying, oh, we're going to give your passport back, come sit in the bus. They got the buses. So there were senior actors who said they're just going to deport us, and they're lying to us, because Egyptian authorities are known to lie a lot. So all of that was happening. There was chaos. But in another moment, people again were like, the bigger thing we've come for is Gaza, to break the siege. Let's sit here and let's protest. And that's when it started happening. After probably an hour of protesting, the Egyptian authorities started getting aggressive and forcefully started, like 2 or 3 officials, they surrounded us and forcefully picked up somebody, and they pulled them and pushed them into the bus. People were sitting in the group, and they were holding each other so that they become a chain, and the Egyptian authorities can't break them. And that was like another moment that was captured by many, and it was that they were not able to break the groups, and that's when they started beating people. They started dragging women. They started dragging women who were from Africa, black women especially, who were wearing hijab, were they were targeted. They were looked at, like Arab nationals were targeted specifically. So all of that, and whites were not, they were of course also beaten up and dragged, but the difference was there. So it also shows another side of Egyptian authorities. We were, after everyone stood there, they fought as much as they could, and for an hour that it happened. And eventually, when they beat us up and they dragged people, they slowly broke the group, and we were detained, pushed into the buses and detained. There were 3 to 4 buses from Ismailia, and they moved. We were 2 buses whose passports were not given. We were made, we for 2-3 hours we were just roaming around. We had no idea, which is something we have seen in India as well, when protesters are detained. So there was no idea, but people in the bus, there was a Palestinian Dutch woman. She had this flag, and we were chanting slogans, and all of that was happening. So then at night we were detained at 5, and around 9 or 10 they dropped us at the Cairo airport, and we were told that the police will come and give us our passport, after which we'll be deported. But no passport came, and that's pretty much things.
So how was the response of Indian embassy? I mean, of course, there's also the matter of security. Then you're stranded in a
foreign land,
and which is more and they're not nice to you.
Yeah.
and there's also that additional pressure.
Yeah.
So how was the response? And I mean, now that you're here, safe, sound, we're happy, and we're really we're thankful that you're back, safe and sound. But how was the response by the government? I mean, by the Indian embassy there?
As soon as we reached the Cairo airport, there were journalists and journalist groups here in Delhi who, and even Maktoob, who started mobilizing immediately, after which emails were sent to Egyptian, like Indian embassy in Egypt. There were calls made to the ambassador's office directly by some of my friends and colleagues, and that's why there was a massive pressure. Again, that comes with a privilege because I was a journalist. That happened. If there was somebody who was a civilian, I don't know, probably pressure would be created to bring them safely. But I still feel that massive pressure was created because of, the connections I had. And so I got a call after, like, in an hour from the Indian embassy saying that, we know about the situation, we'll figure it out, you'll get your passport. Till then I was told I'll get my passport, but eventually things didn't work out. But their response, I would say, was supportive, because there were people from like Germany whose literally embassies abandoned them. Like they had to figure out everything on my own. I was at least, like, my emergency passport I got, which was the last resort, and we had to do that. I was supported by the Indian embassy, but I feel that they did not create enough pressure on the Egyptian authorities to give back the passport. And I think that was not just Indian embassy, all the other embassies as well. They did not create enough pressure, which shows that firstly, Egyptian authorities, they didn't care about what they were doing to other nationalities. There were people from, forget brown countries for a moment. I mean, literally European and US citizens and Canadian citizens were there, and they were not treated like, they were beaten up. And like, I forgot to mention, like, while at the checkpoints, thousands of people, their passports were also taken away but given back eventually, because there was a lot of them. And they sat down there at the checkpoint itself. They blocked the checkpoint and they started protesting. They sat there throughout the night, and I think till next day. But then there were some Egyptian thugs who were hired by the Egyptian police to beat up the protesters, and there were videos of that viral. And because of that, everyone had to disperse because of their safety. So the situation was tensed. I mean, honestly, like, the whole, the march to Gaza was, this was a whole tensed environment. And we could see, like, for us, for those who are coming from outside, this was such a tense environment. For those who are living there, and Egyptian journalists and activists and advocacy groups have been trying to themselves protest for Palestine, but have been detained, and I've heard a lot of them are still in jail for merely talking about Palestine. I've been told Egyptian journalists are not allowed to write about Palestine. A lot of them had to leave the country because of the incarceration a lot of advocacy groups and journalists are facing. So this is one side of Egyptian authorities that was there, but it came out in the open with this. In regards to others, it also felt, because somebody on social media said that you guys were detained and deported because your embassies didn't do enough. And it made sense. If collectively embassies of everyone who were detained put pressure on the authorities, Egyptian authorities, things would be different, but that didn't happen. So as much as I'm thankful to the Indian embassy for getting me back home safely, I also feel that enough pressure was not created, not just for ourselves, but for the safety of so many, for those who were deported, for letting us march and for me as a journalist to do my job and cover the march.
So we have been seeing that, that all these attempts to break the siege are not, the kind of opposition that these civilian movements, these movements by regular people, what you have opposite is structured regimes, proper government authorities with so much force, they're trying to stop it. Whereas the picture in Palestine, it is making it more urgent to break the siege, because you see that even in the name of aid, whenever Israel or whatever aid Palestinians are getting, it is becoming sites of massacre. These are like, flower massacre is happening. People, you see, a pile of flour. There's so much white powder and this blood stains everywhere. And these sort of images are, and it has become normal for us to even normalize that people who simply go out for, to collect food, to stand in queues, and then they get shot in blood day. So what do you think is going to be about, how are these people's movement, what will become of these kind of people movement? Because I don't know if sitting here we can say, okay, Indian government is going to help, Egyptian government is going to help, US is going to help, or somebody is going to intervene. Looks like the whole world is sort of just normalize the idea that every day 100 Palestinians die. That is, and it's a news, and it's like regular day. So in such an environment that has made us so robotic in terms of processing what is happening around us, how do you think these people's movement who are trying to break the siege or somehow provide some aid to Palestinians, so what do you think will become of it? Or are there any more further marches planned like these, or attempts to break the siege?
I think it's not going to stop now. I think people had enough, and I think there were also conversations in Egypt when people were sitting that maybe these movements started late. Maybe we were relying on the governments, on authorities to probably stop this genocide. We were doing protests in our own countries. I mean, even in India, I mean, there were only few places that, protests happened massively. Otherwise, people were detained. So,
and also the repercussions of these protests.
Yeah, protests. I mean, already there is censorship, and there's this massive curb on free speech. There's so many journalists and activists who are in jail for speaking on issues, and the repercussions of Palestinian of supporting. Now they're even arresting people who were collecting funds for Gaza. So the repercussions of that have been harsh, but I feel that people have had enough. People are angry that for almost 2 years, we've seen so many die in front of us, literally. And I feel that right now there is aggression in a way that we want to break the siege. We want this genocide to stop. We want these imperialist regimes we want them to not exist anymore. These regimes that have done this for decades, killed so many people, innocent people, for their own profit. And Palestine also exposed everyone, countries, societies. So many civil society members and organizations have been exposed, including the United Nations, openly. How they have been complicit in if not like doing it directly, not even stopping it. So I feel that the movements are not going to stop now. Movements are going to happen. Movements were already happening, but this is not going to stop now. The Tunisia convoy was also stopped. They also had the same fate. They were beaten up, and 7 of their members were detained, and then they were released after a few days. They're again coming from what I've heard and what I saw. There's another group that's again going to go back. There is Malaysia announced 1,000 fleet to Gaza. It's going to be a huge movement. They're planning it. We are looking forward to it. Everyone would also, they're also opened for contributions in any way possible. So that's going to happen. There is going to be marches again. There's a lot of mobilization happening, and these authorities, these regimes, including the Egyptian authorities that actually closed the border, did not allow Palestinians to come to their side, because when they stopped taking in refugees at one point. Why? Because the Egyptian authorities said we're not going to take. There were videos of Palestinians begging them to open the borders, but that did not happen. So there is anger. There is this massive, the mobilization is going to happen, because I think people have seen enough. And we also have to realize, while the global march to Gaza got a lot of attention when that was happening, and simultaneously Iran-Israel was happening, people were still being killed. We need to stop getting used to this news. We need to stop getting used to the fact that hundreds of people are killed every day. We need to stop. I think the idea of these authorities is to let us get used to the fact that genocides are happening, not just in Gaza, but everywhere where genocides are happening. They want us to get normalized to this idea, but I think that no, we should not, and that's what Palestine has done. It has not only exposed but showed people that we've been living in this carpet rock of ignorance, and now it's like breaking, because this is what regimes are capable of. I mean, literally nobody is able to stop these governments from bombing Gaza, from killing innocents. And I feel that there is this mobilization happening massively everywhere. I mean, why are people who are normal citizens getting concerned? I mean, everyone's waking up to this reality that for far too long we have let all of this happen. So I feel the movements are not going to stop now. Even in India, now I see that since I've come back, protests have started happening again, discussions are happening again, which were happening before because of the repercussions and because of the authorities' pressure had stopped for a bit. Young people have started coming out. Young people have come out on the street. They're talking about Gaza. They're talking about Palestine. They're talking about breaking the siege. So mobilization is happening everywhere in their own way. I don't think it's going to stop now.
Yeah, I mean, we're also very proud of you in the sense that you have. I mean, you attempted to go and be part of this global march. In a way, I think a part of us also traveled with you and to see and bringing back the news and reality of that they are surrounded by vultures.
There were, like, I would like to add, there were many Palestinians I met who were so happy that Indians were part of it. I mean, It was so overwhelming that it was. These people are so strong, and I was like baffled, why are you getting happy that there were people from India, from different countries who were coming. We were so late and they were like, no, you came for us. Look, your passports were taken away. So many were deported, but you came for us. And they were like, they hugged, they fed us. They were like, it was, in a way also, it was this march was such a beautiful thing because I saw people I could not even imagine meeting personally coming together for one cause. And I think as a journalist as well, I want to come out of this idea of neutrality because it's not going to take us anywhere. We need to, as humans, talk about what's happening. And it was a powerful thing. I think the pressure of passport being taken away was gone the moment I met these people, and they said, we're so proud of you, we're so glad people from India joined. We love India, we love their culture. And that showed that what unity, what can happen. And they're like, thank you for standing for us. That was like, and I was just, for that moment, I was like, I'm so glad I came. I'm so glad all of this happened, and I don't care all of this happened. And if I had to go back again, I would, because that is the only way we can show solidarity.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's nothing more to ask. This has been a fulfilling conversation with you as well. And we really hope that, in our lives, we're going to see end to this genocide and these regimes fall. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm not speaking like a typical journalist interviewing you. I mean, because since we've derailed long back from the formal conversation.
Typical journalism should not exist as well.
But yeah, I think I really hope that this ends and we all get to do the part that we are supposed to do in this long fight of towards the justice for what people have been suffering for so long, and bring out the stories with bravery like you. So thank you for being with us.